Good afternoon. Thank you for being here today. The Appropriations Subcommittee on State and Local Transportation will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll for today's attendance?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Steele.
Here.
Representative Slaw.
Present.
Wait, I gotta get my pen working. Representative Borton.
Yes, here.
Representative DeSena. Representative Robinson.
Present.
Representative Morgan.
Present.
Representative Edwards. Madam Chair, you have 5 of 7 members. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Clerk. And today, Representative Slaw moves to adopt the minutes of the September 10th meeting. No objections. The motion prevails by unanimous consent. So today's committee is about the Blue Water Bridge. And we're going to get an overview from Amy from the Blue Water Bridge Authority, but you're going to explain that a little bit more. And in the 2025-2026 budget, we are going to have Bill Hamilton just go over the numbers a little bit before you get started, Amy, if that's okay, because we are a budget committee and we always want to put it in a perspective of a budget first. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, one housekeeping matter before we start, if you don't mind. So several weeks ago, the Citizens Research Council of Michigan sent the subcommittee a written testimony. They didn't want to testify in person, and it was for the July 30th meeting. We didn't get it in then. We forgot last week. So today in your packet, you should have this just for the record, and it will be in the official minutes. So there's that. And then second, members, you're familiar with the House Fiscal Agency line item summary that describes the budget in detail. This is a description of the current year budget, a 2025 budget, which ends in a couple of weeks. And I've highlighted all the areas in the budget that include funding for the Blue Water Bridge. On the first page, you'll notice almost $4 million appropriated in debt service for bonds that were issued in support of Blue Water Bridge capital projects. So you see that it should be highlighted, $3,963,000 in change. So that's debt service. There's a small amount appropriated Blue Water Bridge share of the Michigan Department of Transportation's information technology costs, baseline IT costs, $58,200. And then the next couple pages, in the road and bridge program, the big appropriation line item for state trunk line, federal aid road and bridge. That's MDOT's big capital program. And within that $1.6 billion appropriation is, in the current year, 19.1 million of Blue Water Bridge appropriation. And again, that supports Blue Water Bridge capital projects, which I'm sure our testifiers will talk about in some detail. And then finally, we appropriate in the budget an annual appropriation, ongoing appropriation for Blue Water Bridge operations. And in the current fiscal year, you'll see 47 FTE positions, funding of $7.8 million. Again, this is from the state-restricted Blue Water Bridge Fund. And that fund receives revenue from tolls collected at the bridge and from a rental for the duty-free shop. So those funds entirely support the Blue Water Bridge. There's no general fund support. There's no support from the state trunk line fund. It's effectively self-supporting. And then finally, in the current year, there was a $990,000 appropriation, a one-time appropriation for equipment and facilities at the bridge. So that's a quick run-through of the current year, how the Blue Water Bridge is recognized in the current year budget. And that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you. That's very helpful. I really appreciate you doing this and breaking it down, and so we can see it visually and hear about it at the same time. So thank you, William. And so, Amy, if you want to come up here and do the testimony. So today is Amy Winn, the Blue Water Bridge Administrator, and I appreciate you being here. And if you could just assume that we know nothing, okay, and that because we have thousands And I mean, what, 11, 12,000 bridges across the state of Michigan. And I don't want to say every one of them is done differently, but a whole heck of a lot of the bridges, the way that they're funded and repaired, are done differently. And especially when we have these international bridges, and like the Mackinac Bridge, those are done differently with different authorities. So if you can just start from like ground zero and work from there, I would appreciate it.
Okay. Well, welcome, or thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to explain about the Blue Water Bridge. And yes, you are correct. Every big bridge, you're going to hear me refer to big bridge, meaning our large international bridges in the state of Michigan. The unique factor about Blue Water Bridge is that we are not ran by an authority. We are a entity of MDOT. So I do not have a board that I report to, like the International Bridge in Sault Ste. Marie or the Mackinac Bridge in Mackinac City. I report to Becky Curtis, who is the Bureau Director of the Bureau of Bridges and Structures. So the other very unique factor about the Blue Water Bridge is that the state of Michigan owns 1/2 of 2 bridges. The Blue Water Bridge has 2 spans, and we own right up to the U.S.-Canadian border down the middle of the St. Clair River. So the other 2 halves of the spans are owned by Federal Bridge Corporation Limited, which is a crown corporation of the Canadian government, and we work in tandem to maintain the structures and provide for the international crossing. So those are kind of the 2 very unique things about our operations. As far as the funding perspective is concerned, we are self-funded, and so all of our toll revenue goes in support of our operations and our capital improvement projects, which is the maintenance of the facilities and the structures themselves. Currently, well, we'll get into the slide. I think it'll be easier for you to understand once we get into the slide, but I think it is important to know that we do not expend those state dollars out of the general fund or through the trunk line fund, that we are all self-served by our revenue. Now, we do have 3 sources of revenue, and that is toll collection, our toll rates, our duty-free percentage that we receive each month based off of the sales from the duty-free, and we also have leasing payments because we do lease facilities to CBP through GSA through the federal government. So those are the 3 ways that we generate funding. Repeat the CFT and the CSG. The CBP is Customs Border Protection, so that's Homeland Security. And then GSA is the General Services Agency, which does all of the renting for any federal agency. All right. Okay. So, do you want to just get started through the slide? Is that okay? All right. So, just as a sidebar, I've been a state of Michigan employee for 29 years. I've been at the Blue Water Bridge for the past 8. I am going to talk a little bit about our plaza expansion project that we have going on now, because it is a significant project in the state of Michigan. But that project did begin about a decade ago, and so some of the information that we're going to talk about today, this is a continuation of a project that began quite some time ago. All right. Just some general information to begin with. We have twin spans at the Blue Water Bridge, which is wonderful because we have built-in redundancy. And when we need to do work on one span, we're able to use our second span and utilize traffic in both directions. So we are never closed. We may have a delay in processing, but our operations are open 365, 24/7. We have 2 different types of bridges. We have one truss-style bridge and one arch-style bridge. The original costs and some details are in there if you'd like to take a look at those later, but They're just some fun facts about the two spans themselves. The original span was built in 1938. The second span was built in 1997. They both remain in excellent condition. They are inspected yearly through a consultant contract that we have. And so we also have pretty strict requirements of reporting to the FHWA and the USDOT on the conditions of the spans because of their size and their complexity. So, a couple of traffic statistics. We have about 4 million vehicles that crossed the Blue Water Bridge in 2024. We had about $110 billion of trade that flowed across the Blue Water Bridge in 2024. We are the third busiest border crossing for total traffic between the United States and Canada. And when I speak of traffic, you're going to hear me talk about passenger traffic, which is your traditional cars, and commercial traffic, which is our semi-trucks. We are the busiest commercial crossing between the United States and Canada currently. We are, just last month, the numbers just came in for August, we processed 32,000 more commercial vehicles than the Ambassador Bridge did. We have held that number one position for almost a full year now as far as commercial crossings are concerned. Additionally, the USDOT statistics were just released, and in June, that's their latest numbers, we were the largest crossing for value of goods between Canada and the U.S. That's the first time that that's ever happened for the Blue Water Bridge. So we continue to grow. Our current toll rates are $4 an hour, or $4 for an auto, and $4 per additional axle. And for our commercial vehicles, it's $4.25 per axle. And I'm going to do the quick calculation here for you. We are about a 60% commercial crossing, which means we do a lot of our semi-trucks. Our passenger traffic is down post-COVID. It continues to be down, but our money-generating toll rate is through the commercial traffic. Your average commercial vehicle has 5 axles. So for every passenger car that crosses, we make $4. For every average commercial vehicle that crosses, we make $4.25 times 5. So it is considerably more, we generate a lot more revenue being a commercial crossing. And that is very different than, say, the International Bridge up in Sault Ste. Marie, who is primarily a passenger crossing. So that's why when COVID hit, we didn't have quite as much of an impact because those commercial vehicles kept moving. The passenger vehicles certainly slowed down, but those commercial vehicles did keep moving. The Blue Water Bridge has a prepaid program. It's called the Edge Pass. We have over 12,000 customers, and this offers a 50-cent discount to the toll rate to our commuter accounts, which are people with personal vehicles. One thing that happens at most of the international crossings that I think a lot of times people don't understand is that we have workers that cross the border every day. Typically, a lot of healthcare employees cross the border every day for work. Additionally, in the Port Huron area, we also have numerous citizens who have family members still in Canada that they care for, and they cross the border frequently. So this Edge Pass program allows them a dedicated, unmanned lane that they can just go through, that they don't have to sit and wait with the other traffic that's waiting to be processed. So anybody can sign up for this, but as of right now, we have 12,000 customers, and it does offer a 50-cent discount to our toll rate. Additionally, just as a note, we are going to have a $1 toll increase that will occur in December of 2025. That will generate about an additional $6 million in revenue for the Blue Water Bridge. This next chart, which is going to be it'll be hard for you to see up there. But what this is a comparison toll rate chart. And I wanted to bring this to your attention because even though we have a $1 toll rate that's going to go into effect December 1st, our toll rate remains considerably lower than any of our crossings. And for instance, the Ambassador Bridge, for a passenger vehicle, they charge $9 for a crossing compared to our $4. And for a commercial vehicle, again, 5 axles, we're $21.25, they are $70. So there is an extreme difference between toll rates across the borders between US and Canada. I'll call to your attention the Peace Bridge also. That connects Buffalo, New York to Fort Erie, Ontario. They are also a large commercial crossing, very similar to the Blue Water Bridge. Their passenger vehicle rate is $8, and their 5-axle commercial truck rate is $40. So even though we have a $1 toll rate increase, we are still considerably lower than other crossings. So this you can look at your leisure, but this has all of the various crossings. All right, this is a traffic comparison chart from comparing August 2024 to August 2025. Our annual average difference is about 5% decrease. That is due to the fact that last year at this time, we had about a 30% increase. So although you see a 5% decrease, when you put it in context of what we're comparing it to last year, we're still up 25% versus the 2023 numbers. Our commercial difference right now is we're still at an increase of 9%. So again, that commercial traffic keeps rolling, and our passenger difference, our everyday commuter, is down about 17%. That stood for about the past 2 years. So those are just post-COVID that's not been recovered. And everybody loves a pie chart. So this is our revenue by vehicle type. It's just depicting for you the percentage of revenue that we get from each of these individual types. We have RVs, buses, auto, and truck. All right. Our FY 2024 revenue and operating expenses. In FY 2024, the Blue Water Bridge collected $21,976,000 and some change in revenue. Expenses for FY 2024 were $7,133,983. Our capital improvement expenses between October 1st of 2022 and April 30th of 2025, the Blue Water Bridge expended $69.6 million on capital improvements. And I bet you wonder what we spent the $69.6 million on. So we had a LED lighting project where we upgraded all the lights on the Blue Water Bridge to LED. We had a Span 2 resurfacing, which involved a complete redecking of the MDOT portion of Span 2. In addition, we had a cleaning and coating project that involved sandblasting, cleaning, painting, and sealing the MDOT portion of the structure with corrosion-resistant paint. We have our annual inspection. We also had a 3D modeling project, which created a 3D map of utilities and other critical underground structures. We've begun Component 1 construction, and we also had design costs in preparation of Component 1 of the Plaza Expansion project. And we also contributed $35 million towards the DTE substation upgrade that occurred. The DTE substation was inside our plaza proper, and as we've ventured into the Plaza Expansion project, we needed to move that DTE substation outside of the plaza area, and it was determined that our portion, or to rebuild what was there, would be $35 million. The total expense of that DTE substation upgrade currently is about $115 million. DTE is paying the remainder of those funds. Right, this is a map of our Plaza Expansion project. Component 1 is in blue. That is funded work. That is the work that we have begun and continue to work on. Most of the work will be completed by the end of this construction season, but we will extend into 2026 to finalize and complete some noise walls on the west side of the plaza project. Component 2 is in the green area. That is also funded work. This will move the duty-free location inside the plaza proper. Currently, it sits outside of the plaza proper, which is not typical. Your duty-free store is usually past the point of no return, meaning you can't go to it and then leave and not get into the next country. So that is being moved into its proper location. We are building new toll facilities and a maintenance cold storage area, a new plaza loop, which will allow for more efficient movement of our commercial traffic, a realignment of the local traffic that will enter onto the bridge, and we are also adding in CBP, or Customs Border Protection, outbound inspection booths and a facility for them to perform their work. It's part of their program of requirements, so anytime that we make adjustments to the footprint, we are required to go and look at their program of requirements and offer what we can towards their goals. So this is in alignment with outbound inspection, where currently there is no area for that to be performed. Their goals too. It's CBP, Homeland Security, yes. CBP falls under the Homeland Security umbrella. So, and then in the orange, part of that is component 2 and part of that is component 3. However, it is funded, that portion of it. That is our interim NII, non-intrusive inspection facility. That is where Customs, CBP, takes the vehicles and places them through an X-ray area to see what's inside of those vehicles and decide if they want to take a further look and unload those commercial vehicles. So that we have to move in order to complete component 2, so we need to give them a temporary space. That's what that orange area is. Component 3 is in the pink-purple shade. That has not yet been funded, along with component 4, which is in the yellow shade, and that is also contingent on confirmed funding. The last 2 components consist of all CBP, or Homeland Security infrastructure, and at this point in time, GSA and CBP are not able to commit to the leasing funding that's needed for this. There is so much more space that they need that it will require a prospectus through the federal government. That usually takes about a 2-year time frame, so we've been told from GSA and CBP, but we are not going to build facilities that we don't have a commitment for them to occupy. So components 3 and 4 are going to stay pending until we get the commitment from our federal partners that they will be able to occupy those spaces. The agreement that we have with the Federal Highway folks is that each one of these components are being built with independent utility. And what that means is that each one of them can stand alone into the future. So if we only build components 1 and 2, we can still function as needed without completing 3 and 4. If we built 1, 2, and 3, we will be able to function as needed without completing number 4. Each one of these components had to be able to stand alone. In addition, we do have a $25 million INFA grant that we are utilizing towards the Component 1 project, which is about a $40 million price tag. So we will be utilizing all of those INFA grant funds in this first component. The DTE substation that we relocated, as I previously discussed, was $35 million. Currently, for the plaza expansion component 1, that involves the intersection reconfiguration, a relocation of the Pine Grove connector ramp, noise wall installation, and minor reconfiguration of I-94 connection to the plaza. We've budgeted $46 million. $11.6 million has been spent to date, with construction ongoing. The infra grant that I've already discussed is $25 million, and that will be expended through that plaza, through the Component 1 project. Component 2 will consist of the expansion of the plaza to the south, including the relocation of the MDOT tolling operations, the duty-free store, as well as the addition U.S. Customs outbound inspections. Expected cost is $300 million for design and construction. Current efforts, May of 2025, we mobilized for Component 1. Again, we expect completion to be done by July of 2026. Additionally, in May of 2025, Component 2 procurement was advertised. In January of 2026, we expect evaluation and selection of Component 2 technical proposals. In March of 2026, we expect to award the Component 2 contract. In 2026 through 2029, Component 2 work will begin, with substantial construction expected to begin in 2027 for 2 to potentially 3 years, but this will depend on the schedule that's proposed by the design build team. All right, Components 3 and 4, the ones that are not yet funded. The remaining elements of the purpose and need will be resolved with the completion of Components 3 and 4, so the original purpose and need for the project. The current estimated costs of construction and engineering for those 2 components, not including any costs to the federal tenant for furniture, fixtures, equipment, leasing costs, ranges from $379 million to $714 million, with the most likely outcome to be in the middle at about $562 million. These estimates were obtained by conducting a cost schedule risk analysis workshop with FHWA. We also had contributions from various subject matter experts, and this assumes concurrent construction will escalate if the project's later phases continue to be delayed. So the cost will continue to rise as the project continues to be delayed. And we're back to the front.
Okay. Nice job, Amy. Thank you. I'm going to open up for questions, and I just wanted to start with backing back to the funding. So we had $990 million for a one-time funding from last or this year's budget.
990,000.
Oh,
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Yep.
It's so unusual. It's in the thousands and not in
Yes.
the millions. Sorry.
Never mind.
So, okay, and then was that equipment already bought?
That equipment, we are in the process of procuring the equipment now. Some of it was equipment, some of it was facility improvements. And additionally to that, we needed to build, or we are in the process of building a street sweepings building that will comply with all of the regulations necessary.
And then all the improvements that were made or are being made in the process, the funding came only from what you guys have collected, and no debt has been incurred for?
Correct.
And then was there federal funding as well, or only in a leasing capacity?
No, only in the leasing capacity.
Okay.
We don't utilize federal funds. The only time that we would do that is if we receive a grant.
Okay, and then it looks like that bond is close to being paid off.
Correct.
Are you considering to remortgage it, or are we going to pay that off?
No. So that bond has been remortgaged as many times as it could. And at this point, that bond is for the costs associated with the construction of Component 2. It is due to be paid off in 2036, with that $3 million price tag continuing to decrease as we get closer to the payoff date. We will be bonding for the Component 2 portion of the work. So in lieu of us having the bond for the construction of Component 2, we will have a bond for the plaza component, or the plaza expansion project Component 2. We never probably will be free and clear of ownership of the spans. If so, there is some federal legislation that discusses the fact that you could no longer accept a toll rate.
Okay. How much are you going to, it probably was in the numbers, but do you know how much that you're going to go after to borrow for Component 2?
It would be approximately $300 million.
And then you haven't gone out for bond on that yet?
Not yet. We've had the discussions with our finance folks, but we're not going to need that money until probably 2027.
And then 2027?
Yep.
300 million bond, 20-year bond?
Yet to be determined.
Okay, and then are we fiscally conservative, trying to project in the future that we're going to need more improvements? Are we putting money in a rainy day fund that we don't have to bond in the future for our future, because you know it's going to have to be cleaned up and fixed in the future?
Yes, absolutely. We have an asset management plan that is extended out for the next 30 years, which gives us a real good idea when we'll need to repaint the spans, resurface the spans, do routine, larger maintenance projects. Also, we have the same type of asset management plan for our facilities. And so the costs associated for those projects are added into what we expect to need in future revenue. So yes, we are accounting for any of those costs in addition to what our bond repayment will be.
Component 2 you're doing regardless of the lease,
Correct.
and you need that. Okay, so there's no way of getting around borrowing that money.
Correct, yes. We expended, easy math numbers, we made $20 million in 2024, but between 2022 and 2024, we spent $69.6 million. Those funds came out of our capital account.
Okay.
So that's our savings. That's what I refer to as our savings account.
So we're shy a lot. Okay. My last question, then I'll pass it to a couple of the other reps, is I don't get over there very often, but I happen to go to the boat where they launch them off to the Mackinac.
Oh, yeah.
So I went to Port Huron, and as I pulled off the highway, and it was backed up on I-69 terribly. Luckily, I followed people and went on the shoulder and was able to avoid that traffic jam. But it was probably I would bet it's a 3-hour wait to get those trucks across that road based on how far it was backed up on a Friday. So what are we doing about that?
So,
and if the Gordie Howe will help at all, I would hope, but.
sure. So Gordie Howe, the planners have figured that there's about a 6% diversion rate that will start to use the Gordie Howe crossing. We do service different corridors. We service the majority of the I-69 corridor. They service the majority of the I-94 corridor, right? So that 6% makes good sense to me. In addition to that, the Gordie Howe will be carrying hazardous material loads, which right now we are carrying, so that will divert those crossings to staying in the Detroit area. So yes and no. We don't expect a large portion of the commercial traffic that we have right now to divert to the Gordie Howe. However, we don't typically have backups that extend out to I-69. During the construction process, and we were in construction this past summer, we were down to one lane on the freeway, which obviously is going to cause some temporary concerns. The other issues that we do have to contend with is we hold traffic at our tolls when CBSA, which is Canadian Customs, is having a more difficult time processing in a quick manner. So we can pass along as much traffic as they can accept. The one thing that we can't do is put a whole bunch of commercial trucks sitting on the span and just inching forward, right? Because that deteriorates the surface, and it also has a load impact to the span. So we let that traffic back up to about middle of the bridge, and then we hold traffic on our end until that traffic clears, and then we'll send CBSA more traffic. So although you see some of those backups, they are generally not due to our staff not being able to process the traffic. It's due to the efficiency or how many booths are open for Canadian Customs to be processing.
So are we in communication with Canada with these terrible backups?
And I would love to say that it's just Canada, but it's not. Our U.S. Customs backs up traffic far into the 402 on the Canadian side. So all four of the stakeholders are in constant communication. We have 24/7 operations centers, and we are constantly communicating. So we'll call over there and say, any way you guys can get us a few more lanes? And they will say yes or no. We have no control over how many officers are available through CBSA to process incoming vehicles, and so we're kind of left to making the request, but if they have the officers available, they'll put them out there. If not, we have to stick with what we've got.
So have we talked to the Congress people over on that side of the world too? You have as well?
We have,
Okay.
we have regular meetings with all of the interested parties. So, but again, like I said, I don't want to paint the picture that U.S. Customs doesn't have delays too, because they do.
Okay. Rep. Slaw. And I did see. He was
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, question for you about payment for crossing. So, do we accept cash?
We do not.
And if I were to hand you a dollar bill, do you believe that it says for all current or for all debts, public and private?
It may.
And if that's true of our U.S. currency, why would we not be able to use that as a crossing for a bridge? I've got people in my district that don't have credit cards, so they're unable to actually cross the bridge. Why is that fair to our people?
So, I mean, when we went to a cashless operation, we did engage with the Attorney General's office on whether or not that was an acceptable practice. The determination was made that we did not have to accept cash. Most tolling facilities are moving to cashless operations. It's not uncommon for that to be happening. Additionally to that, there are staffing shortages that occur, and in order to have an unmanned or unattended lane, you have to have an electronic form of payment. So.
What about throwing money in the basket?
So that technology is no longer utilized. It's not been at the bridge since I've been there. I've been told that they clogged up all the time and required a lot of maintenance. And so those were removed from the bridge years ago. So.
I'm surprised that question wasn't asked of the Treasury Department versus the Attorney General, because I was the we were treasurers, and you collected all forms of cash because it's legal tender. So I need to look into that one. Rep. Morgan?
Thank you, Chair. I have one quick question in the line of questions before my actual question, which is just following up on the cause of the backups. What more could be done on our end to try and encourage proper staffing or otherwise with the Canadian folks or the U.S. government folks around the backups? It seems like if we have a very clear known problem that's frequent, we should problem solve. We should fix that. What is it that we could encourage in terms of the state legislature or otherwise?
Yeah. So being that those are both two federal agencies, what I hear most often from those port directors is it's a budgeting issue. They don't have the budget to have more officers at their facilities. And so additionally to that, there are some working conditions that need to be currently abided by, and I'll give you an example. For CBSA, as part of their agreement with their employer, they can work 1 hour inside of the booth, and then they have to go inside the building and work for 1 hour. And they have to switch all of the time. During that switch period, it leaves anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes at the top of every hour without them processing any traffic at all. So if you can imagine, as the day moves on, those backups continue to increase because for 3 to 5 minutes of every hour, they're not processing any traffic at all. So there's conditions of their employment, and there's also staffing issues.
I guess more on maybe the U.S. side of things. I've never heard of that, but on the U.S. side of things, are there, that clearly wouldn't be an issue on our side here on the U.S. side, right?
No, they switch booths, but they're not mandated to go inside and outside. So from my conversations with our current port director, it's a budget issue. They only have funds for so many officers, and I think they would need some more. Think they would need allocation of more dollars in order to have more officers at the plaza and available.
I do know the feds did just substantially boost funding for CBP. Maybe that will help if there's a request that we can make in terms of our, to prioritize some of those resources to moving traffic more efficiently along that border. But okay, to my actual question, which is related to this, so in the budget that we passed here in the House, we proposed, the budget proposed a 1.1 million and 8.5 FTE reduction in the operations of the bridge. Mm-hmm. Would that impact this issue? How would that impact the Blue Water Bridge if we were to implement that?
So because we are self-funded, our appropriation line is a projection of the revenue that we expect to make. So I don't know that our regular operations and maintenance budget would be affected. The decrease in the FTEs, I would imagine, potentially could have an impact on us for any vacancies that we would currently hold that we're trying to fill. I would imagine that those could potentially be removed from availability for us, and we do run on a pretty tight ship. 47 folks in total to run the entire operation is pretty thin. So I think it would have impacts to potentially our ability to keep our facilities and our structures in the same conditions as they are today, because we would have less staff to do that.
But those aren't the folks. Are those the folks who are processing folks coming over their bridge, or is that CBP and then these are the folks who are doing other things at Blue Water Bridge? So
the 47 folks that we have, that consists of maintenance employees, engineering staff for Blue Water, administrative staff, and our tolling operations staff.
Oh, so that is the tolling staff?
That is the tolling staff, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chair, for letting me ask a couple questions.
And we were very conscious of filled positions versus non-filled positions in the budget process. So that was taken into consideration in the reduction. So we'll look into it a little bit further to make sure that's true. So I want to go back to the debt portion of it. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that they don't need to come back to the legislation to borrow the money because of the tolls in which they collect. Mm-hmm. So does MDOT go for the funding, or does the bridge? And the interest rates have gone up. It's borrowing is not as advantageous as it was a mm-hmm. handful of years ago. Mm-hmm. So who goes after the funding?
So currently the way
bonding.
The last discussions that we've had with our finance folks would be that the Blue Water Bridge would be the entity that would be getting the bond, not necessarily MDOT, but it would be Blue Water Bridge.
Component 2?
For Component 2.
And Component 2 again is what?
$300 million.
No, what are you doing? What's what are you creating?
We are moving the duty-free. We are building new tolling operations and administrative building. We're creating a maintenance storage facility building. We are implementing a loop so that within the plaza proper, so that we can continue to move that commercial traffic, continue with the flow. We are changing the access to the local roadway in order to access the bridge itself. And we're also building CBP outbound inspection booths and a facility for their workers.
And I could probably ask you off, I'm curious about the duty-free. I didn't even know that it still existed, if they still make money off that process or not.
We do, yes.
Do, okay.
Yes.
And then my last question is the Ambassador Bridge. And I don't see that because I'm tunnel, not the bridge, the Windsor Tunnel. I don't see that in your information. Do you have any input on how much it costs to go through the tunnel and who, I'm not sure who even runs the tunnel?
Yes, so the tunnel is part of an association that we belong to, the BTOA, which is the Bridge and Tunnel Operators Association. Typically, we don't use the tunnel as a comparison because the tunnel does not accept commercial crossings. It's passenger only. So typically, we would not use them as a comparison just because we don't have traffic.
Okay, I guess I didn't realize that. Okay. I really appreciate your information, and does anybody else have any further questions? No? Okay.
Excuse the absent member.
And so my housekeeping is I need to excuse absent members. And thank you for your testimony. And we're at Borton moves to excuse. We already did that. I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm trying to do both at the same time, ad lib and read. So there be no further questions and no further business before the committee. This meeting is adjourned.